starting in 2017. Also, in the protocol, there are a couple of interesting changes and details that are worth mentioning. We'll talk a little bit about the teams and what they're up to. Just a little tiny bit of news about the Yacht Club Tour that's going on in the U.S. and the Yacht America, which has been on tour and will be on tour throughout 2016 and 2017. And if people have questions, just fire them out in the through the chat window, and I'll try to keep an eye on that and answer questions as we go along, and we'll have time for more Q&A at the end. So let's just move into things. So Gothenburg and the results. So the regatta was won by Emirates Team New Zealand. You can see the point total for the event and how each of the teams did. Emirates Team New Zealand was really quite on fire, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and show you some pictures of some of the racing. Oracle Team USA had a great start, posting 2 bullets on the first day. Unfortunately, they didn't do quite as well with, I think it was 2 fourth-place finishes on the second day. And of course, the second day was when the points count double. So they missed out on the big money by getting their wins on the wrong day. Land Rover BAR falling down the leaderboard table a little bit after their good showing at Portsmouth. But once again, that's the effect of having some double point races to count up. SoftBank Team Japan, interesting with Dean Barker on the helm, Chris Draper as the tactician and wing trimmer. Of course, Chris was the helmsman for Luna Rossa and raced against Dean when Dean was helming Emirates Team New Zealand during the Louis Vuitton Cup in San Francisco in 2013. Artemis Racing, they're a bit frustrated, but I know that they are encouraged about the progress that they're making, but certainly would like to see more points on the board. And I've got some photos and a little bit of video to help you understand why they're down where they are. And Groupama Team France, a team that got their funding in place very late in the game, hasn't had much time to train, full of really experienced sailors, and they can always throw a surprise at people, but they're bring up the tail end of the leaderboard. Let's just take a look at a couple of pictures. So here's one that I particularly like in terms of showing what happened in one of the races where Land Rover BAR, Ben Ainslie Racing, took second place in the second race, that is the race number 2 on Saturday. And the reason was that this is actually leg 6, not the final leg. But you can see here what happened at the end of the race, right before the finish line. BAR put up their code 0. Emirates Team New Zealand didn't have theirs rigged, couldn't answer, and right at the finish line, Ben Ainslie Racing managed to pip Emirates Team New Zealand and grab second place in that particular race. Again, another thing in these boats, this picture shows it really well. These boats are really hard to keep going flat and level. It's easy when you're doing a jibe, as what's going on here. You can see both dagger boards are down, trying to pull off a foiling jibe, and it's very, very, very easy to pop a wheelie. Got another set of slides with some more photos, so I'm going to call that one up. As that loads up, we've got some more photos to take a look at from the racing. And of course, that's Bermuda, not Gothenburg, but that's sort of my header slide. Here's the race course. Interesting race course. Rocks right out in the middle of it. This is the Windward Gate. The finish line was down close to the Yacht Club, so the finish line was down here. But this shows one of the things that really came into play a lot was that these rocks right in the middle of the race course made it very interesting. Ian Murray, the head of AC Race Management and Regatta Director, said that what they tried to do when they laid out the course was either to have the rocks right in the middle so that it would be relatively fair, or as close to the middle as they could, so to be relatively fair in terms of letting people go to one side or the other of the rocks, or try to set up the course had the wind shifted a little bit more into the west than it actually was. We had pretty much a southwesterly for most of the racing. But had it shifted a bit more into the west, they would have shifted the course to try to move the rocks off the course and move everything over this way. They didn't do that. They didn't have to do that because the wind stayed relatively steady even on the very light air second day. But the rocks made it really interesting and made for some really interesting visuals. One thing that you can see from this picture is that the guys from Liveline have added a couple of new things, and one of them is getting the sponsors, getting some of the big sponsors' logos out on the water. They actually did get some calls or emails, I guess, about how did you do that? Was there some kind of marking on the water? People who followed the America's Cup starting when Liveline first came out in 2011 for the America's Cup World Series after the first races in Cascais, they actually were getting complaints from people thinking they were dropping dye in the water. But the Liveline guys just do a great job. We'll have a look at, we'll see their work in these photos, and we'll also have a look at some of their work that you don't get to see usually with some of the umpire software screens. So here's the leeward gate, and besides having another logo on the water and seeing those rocks up here in the middle of the course, one of the things that this shows is the way that the tactics played out, which was people tried to get a split. So it was really important tactically for people to try to minimize the number of maneuvers that they did, but this is on day one, where in both races, Oracle came in first and Ben Ainslie Racing came in second in both of those races. And here's BAR trying to get away from Oracle by grabbing the split at the leeward gate. Very, very typical of the way the racing went. We got a question here from Mark about the broadcast on Sunday. It was mentioned that Jimmy might have had food poisoning. He did a little bit, but I interviewed him after the racing, and he said it had nothing to do with that. They just felt slow. Didn't have any explanation for it other than to say they need to do some more work on their light air sailing. There was one other sailor, by the way, who also had food poisoning. That was Arnaud Sarofagis, who is the only non-French on board Groupama Team France. Arnaud is from right near where I live. He's from Geneva. Arnaud is Swiss, and that was a really important guy not to have on the boat because he's their tactician. And Franck Camin just really tries to depend a lot on Arnaud. Arnaud did have food poisoning, wasn't able to race on Sunday. So this is just, again, to give you some views of the race course and talk a little bit of the tactics that we saw. Here's more of the of the nice graphics on the water, and this one I had to show because this is Artemis winning race number 3. That's the first race on Sunday. That was the first double points race, and they really did a horizon job on everybody. They were just hundreds of meters ahead of the entire field. They got a great start. They got a great deploy of their code 0 when they got to the first mark after the blast reach start. So they were able to round the first mark comfortably ahead of the rest of the field. Nathan Outteridge, in the interview that I got to do with him after the racing, said everybody on the boat just took a look back, saw how far the rest of the fleet was behind them, and just settled in to sail their own race. And they really were able to stretch it out and finish way ahead of the rest of the field. One of the things that they did was that when they crossed the finish line, somewhere out here, Nathan said it was about 2 boat lengths, there's some rocks. And the day before, they had actually run into the rocks at the end of the first race. And I've got some pictures of what that did to them. Interesting thing people may have noticed, this is for the marketing geeks in the group, is that we have another logo. And this showed up in Portsmouth. That's the logo that was actually designed by Louis Vuitton. And there's that logo is different from the one that is on the official clothing and was designed for the beginning of this cycle of the America's Cup. There's going to be some kind of rationalization of the logos and the corporate image catalog, but for the moment we got two logos, and that's the Louis Vuitton one. Let's take a look on board and just talk about how they did the sailing. Now, it was obviously different from day one to day two because on day one the wind was quite a bit stronger. Like I said earlier, Emirates Team New Zealand didn't even rig their code 0 on day one. It actually cost them a place right at the end of the second race on day one. On day two, the wind was a lot lighter, and so sailing was quite a bit different. We didn't see any foiling at all on the second day. But let's just take a look at some of the crew and crew positions. So here's a shot from on board Oracle Team USA, pretty obviously. And this is what we normally expect to see. So, of course, we've got Jimmy Spithill, who's helming. He also has a set of push buttons right next to him so that he can control the rake of the dagger board. That rake control, by the way, many of you
I'm webcamming
on the broadcast here know this, but that rake control is driven hydraulically, and the hydraulic power comes not from these winch handles, but from an electric motor that's in the hulls of the boat. So that's a place where there was no place to put grinding pedestals on these boats. There's no cockpits in them without doing a major rework like the teams are doing with the development boats. But here we've got grinding handles for the three winches. So we've got Kyle Langford with his hand on the wing trim winch. We've got Joey Newton who's trimming the headsail. So he's he's got a winch handle for trimming the jib, and the other one that's in the middle here goes to the runner. So that's why nobody's working that. So there's the three winches. This is the way we're used to seeing the guys during the racing. Standard positions. On Sunday, things looked a little bit different though, and everybody who was on the helm often looked a little bit lonely. So it's a good thing that these guys are, even the guys who are not really long-time dinghy sailors certainly have to sail these boats like dinghy sailors. Here's Pete Burling on the helm of Emirates Team New Zealand, and he is steering, obviously. He's got the wing trim line, so this is the wing trim line. Some people call it the wing sheet. I call it the traveler because it really acts like a traveler on a soft sailboat with a regular soft rig. And he's also got the push buttons that we can't quite, actually they're right just next to the winch, are the push buttons. So he's doing the rake control on the dagger board, he's trimming the wing, and he's steering. And the other guys are, in some cases, way up here on the bow. This is the light air day, so they're way forward of the crossbeam, trying to help trim the boat fore and aft, and also having the weight down so that they can be sure to fly the hull. Because if the windward hull isn't flying, these boats get really sticky with the wing on the dagger board. I asked Ian Murray about the performance of these boats compared to the standard AC-45s that we had in the 34th America's Cup World Series, and he said if these boats have both hulls in the water, they are way slower because of the wings on the dagger board. So if they can't foil, they get really slow. So everything on Sunday was about trying to trim the boat fore and aft to enable them to at least fly a hull and get a little bit more speed. So here's Pete Burling, obviously great dinghy sailor, really on fire in the 49er. And now let's take a look at some of the other boats. So here we are. Here's on Land Rover BAR. Ben Ainsley is not only steering, trimming the wing sheet in his left hand, and has to do the daggerboard rate controls. He's hiking, so he's got his toes under the straps, and he's hiking out a bit. Now I've talked a little bit about the helmsman having to trim the daggerboards. In reality, since they weren't foiling on Sunday, there really wasn't any daggerboard trim that they had to worry about, because the daggerboard trim, the rated 4.5 on the daggerboard, is really to control ride height and to get them flying. If you're not in foiling conditions, you pretty much don't have to deal with those buttons. But you sure have to deal with trimming the wing and helming at the same time, and being a little bit lonely in that position. Here's Nathan Outteridge. All by himself on Artemis. In fact, there's nobody even on the windward hull. Everybody is on the leeward side and forward of the crossbeam as they try to get the boat set up for the light air. Oh, one thing in this picture. I'll come back to this a little bit later in the webcast, and we'll talk about the lights that come up on these little towers that are on the boats. And talk about what the different lights mean, because I've had questions about that from a number of people. Some of you know all of the different colors and what they mean. I know that, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. And then even when we look at these sort of dinghy sailing, even Dean Barker, who's not known for being a dinghy sailor, here he is pretty much all by himself, trimming the wing and steering on SoftBank in Japan. One of the things that was also kind of interesting to see was, I'm checking on this. I've asked Hamish Hooper, the press media guy for Emirates Team New Zealand, if I'm right, but Emirates Team New Zealand has the youngest helm with Pete Burling, but they've also got one of the oldest guys in the fleet, Ray Davies. And here's Ray Davies working pretty hard. He's doing the hoist on the code 0 here. So we've got the youngest guy in the boat in the job that requires the least physical work, and we've got the oldest guy in the boat doing some of the harder physical work. Whatever the formula is, they really made things work at this regatta. Let's talk a little bit more about Emirates Team New Zealand, because they had such a good showing. Here's a look at them with crew positions. A little bit odd, but this is light air. Here's Ray Davies all the way forward. So that's your tactician. He's pretty far away from the helmsman, and it made communication really difficult. This, I believe, is Glenn Ashby, the wing trimmer. So he's forward to try to help look around as well, but also leave Peter on the helm to be doing the wing trimming as well. And this is, I think, probably Blair too, trimming the headsail, and Guy Enbean is, I think, down here behind the daggerboard. We can't quite see him in the picture, but interesting thing. And now another picture of Emirates Team New Zealand, again, because they won the regatta. So they seem to, when they were flying a hull, they seem to be flying the hull quite a bit higher than other people. And again, here you can see, here's Pete Burling pretty much all by himself. That's probably Blair over here trimming the headsail. But all the other three guys are forward of the crossbeam and way up here on the bow to try to trim the boat, and of course on the leeward side. Again, in the interviews after the racing, I got to talk to Pete, and I asked him, "You guys seem to be flying the leeward hull or the windward hull higher than the other teams. What did you figure out about that? And what about the crew positions that you were using? They seemed a little bit unusual. How did you guys figure that out?" And he just kind of laughed and he said, "I have no idea. We just did what felt fast." So it really shows that that Pete Burling is just a natural, and what feels fast, and they make the boat go, and they did really well in this regatta and in the series too. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to flip back to my other set of slides where I've got some things to take a look at, and let's see. Artemis's dagger board. Ooh, this is nasty looking. Here is where they met that rock right after the finish line on the first race of the first day. And Ellen, I see that you're on the line. This photo is by Ellen Polk from San Francisco, who has been covering the events all around. She was both in Portsmouth and in Gothenburg. So thanks, Ellen, for letting us use this photo. Talking to the, when you talk about who are the heroes in Gothenburg at this regatta, obviously Emirates Team New Zealand winning the regatta and doing it really well. Another set of heroes might be not quite so obvious, but that's the race committee. They had a very, very short course. This is the shortest course that's been used so far. They were, I think, about 0.6 of a mile for the windward-leeward legs. They have rocks in the middle of the course. They had very light, shifty wind on Sunday, and everything is really driven to try to get it into the TV schedule and the TV windows. They're shooting for about 25-minute races, so the race committee did a really good job in terms of setting the course, making it fair, and getting the races run off in pretty much close to the time limits they had. Another set of guys who were heroes were the shore crew from Artemis with doing this kind of stuff. So they didn't have to repair this dagger board. They wouldn't have had time to. It's not clear. One person I talked to thought it was a write-off. Somebody else actually said, no, that the leading edge of these dagger boards is pretty much all foam. And so most of the shock was taken by the ugliness that you see here. And one of the ways that you could tell that that was the shock absorber is the fact that there was no damage to the dagger board cage or to the hull of the boat. There is on the board, I got to see it in their shop, right here, there's another ding in the dagger board because of being, you know, smashed back against the back end, the aft end of the dagger board cage. But what they did was they just dropped another board in. They were able to borrow a board. One report said it was from ACRM. Somebody else I talked to said that it was a spare board that the French had. With the French in their budget, it would surprise me actually if they had a spare board, but it might have been. I love the French team, by the way, and I'm really happy that they're there. So I just would love to see them with a little bit more money, but they're doing well. So Artemis, here's the dagger board after the grounding. They were able to get back out on the water, of course, and race the next day. They also did a little bit of customization to their rudders. So here are the two rudders in the shed. This is what it's supposed to look like. So this torpedo shape and fillet on here, you may remember that that's the same shape that Oracle Team USA put onto their rudders and rudder wings in the middle of the America's Cup match in San Francisco because they discovered cavitation problems. What happened was that Artemis ran over that rock and they basically knocked this thing off of this rudder and scraped it quite a bit. But this actually, the black part right here, is the lower end of the rudder itself. And pretty much all that happened was they just scraped off the added-on anti-cavitation structure. So here's their head of design. This is Adam May and Loic Perron taking a look at this thing. And here's Freddie, whose last name I probably won't ever be able to pronounce correctly, Gould, gold medalist in the Star, just ahead of Ian Percy, of course, in the 2012 Olympics. But that's some of the customization. Again, photo from Ellen. Thanks very much, Ellen, for the photo. I always like to see some of this detail stuff. Now, Artemis also had a little bit of excitement during the course of the event. On the training day, on Friday, they did not do the training races, and Loïc Perron here apparently gets credit for inventing the technique or developing a technique for putting an AC-45 back up right side up if you fall over. And that's what happened. Artemis capsized in the training event, or before the training races actually got started on Friday. They got the boat right side up. There was no big damage to the wing, but there was enough damage, and it was training day that they wanted to just take it back to the shed and just check things out. But here's the way you get an AC-45 back up right. We can see the flag here, so we can see which way the wind is blowing. You point the bows into the wind. You ease the camber control, which when you ease the camber, it puts more camber into the wing. So it lets the flaps come off the axis of the main element of the wing. And so you get more camber into the wing, which is, guess what, just like an airplane wing on takeoff, they have the flaps down. And then we can't see it in this picture because it's kind of grainy, but what you do is you trim the wing, the traveler line or the wing trim line, you trim it on and trim down to the winch. Here's the winch on the windward side here. With the dry side of the boat, and the wing on the wet side of the boat. The winch is down right sort of behind where my cursor is. So you trim it on, and you basically set the thing up like an airplane wing, and it takes off. And the boat stands back upright again with, of course, a boat with a tow line pulling from the other side to try to help stand it up. But this business of getting the boat pointed into the wind and the wing trimmed on so it works like an airplane actually helps you pop the boat back upright. And its credit for that was given to Loïc Perron. So that's some of the little bit trials and tribulations of our friends from Artemis. They were kind of the hard luck kids. They had the capsize. Nathan Outridge, actually, we'll let Nathan explain what happened there. Let's see if I can get Nathan here to tell us what happened with that capsize.
I was preparing myself mentally while I was driving and everything. In 45 minutes on the road, and still confused this morning.
Pretty breezy out there today, and we were just out there doing a couple of practice jobs. And the race course being so short, there's not a whole lot of maneuver out there. We did a couple of falling dives, and we just went to turn to go upwind. It was a simple case of blue runner still on. As we're running up, ease the sheet, hit the runner. You're in the middle of the power zone, so we tried to dive back down. And we put both bows in, and it just sat there and eventually just rolled over. It was actually really slow, and everyone was fine, held on, and got the boat back up in a couple of minutes. But unfortunately, there's a bit of damage to the wing, so we just got it out now.
So there you go. Basically, what happened is they didn't have their signals completely straight among the crew as they were getting to the end of the run and wanted to head back upwind. They forgot to ease the leeward runner, and what happens there is that the wing bangs into the runner because it's still on tight. What that does is it damages the wing by dinging up some of the ribs that are inside of the wing. It's not a big repair that they need to do, but and it doesn't really affect the performance too terribly much, but it's something that's relatively common, actually, that it's easy to forget to ease that runner, and if you do, you're going to smash your wing into it. And in the case of Artemis, in this one, they actually then flipped the boat over. And we've actually got some footage of what that looked like on board. So let's have a look at what the capsize looked like. from on board. Here's the runner that has not been eased.
Distracted, did you? Yeah, they stopped talking to you. I was like, really grateful to what I found. The minute they start talking to each other, the judges. I get distracted very easily from anything. I can focus only on
Same sequence again. Here's Nathan. This is Chris Brittle, who goes over, and he winds up not being able to hang on. He's the big grinder. He's going to go in the drink.
But it's normal for them to talk to each other.
I think this is Ian Jensen, the wing trimmer who went in there. Let's just play that one more time and take a look at it. And we'll see. Let's watch what the crew does. So here's Googs. Googs is right here. Here's Ian Percy. He sees it coming. He gets up on top of the dagger board, so he doesn't go in. Chris Brittle tries to hang on, does a somersault, and he winds up going in first. Oops. And then Nathan is scrambling to try to hang on, and then finally he drops down in as well. They were really fast at getting the boat turned right side up again, but obviously this was part of their bit of bad luck. No injuries, nobody hurt out of this, but I want to say everybody, not everybody, but other sailors said that these types of moments, when you're very close to flipping one of these things over, happen pretty much any day that you go out in strong conditions. It's just they don't always go over, but they often get into a situation where it feels like you might go over, and in this particular case for Artemis, they did. So that's kind of a look at what it looked like being on board when they went over. I'm going to come back to that's kind of wrapping up the things I did that I wanted to talk about for the Gothenburg event. Let's take a look at the series, because of course this is the America's Cup World Series, right?
Oh, yeah.
They really are. Yeah. From this seat on the side to this one, you watch your console, tap it up.
Boom. Series standing, 2 events. Emirates Team New Zealand in the lead with 72 points, Land Rover BAR, Oracle Team USA. So the top of the leaderboard is probably not too surprising. It's a little surprising maybe that Artemis isn't higher. But interesting here, sorry for the formatting. This before it wound up here up on the webcast system, that everything lined up a little bit better than that second line. But what are the colors are the double points races. So the first 2 scores here in the score line for the event are Portsmouth. There were no races on Sunday, so there were no double points races in Portsmouth. But when we got into the double points races, look at this. Emirates Team New Zealand has a bullet in the 2. Oracle Team USA got their 2 bullets, but unfortunately they got them at the wrong time, because this was the Saturday races in Gothenburg, and when it came time with the big points on the line, they had 2 fourths, a little bit disappointing there. So a little bit of a disappointing scoreline for Oracle Team USA. Really good scoreline in the big money races for Emirates Team New Zealand. That's a good reason why they're at the top of the leaderboard. But there's another reason. Look at this. They haven't had a finish lower than 3rd. And this one right here I colored because this was the one where BAR just pipped them right in the last few meters before the finish, because BAR had their code 0 and Emirates Team New Zealand did not. If it hadn't been for that, these 2 numbers would have been reversed. Oracle with a couple of bullets, but as I said, when it came to the big point races, They had a bit of bad luck. SoftBank Team Japan managed to post a second place in one of the double points races. Artemis posted a bullet in a double points race, but boy, they have been just not doing too well here. This 6 here, remember that's the there are 6, a couple of these 6s. This was the one in Portsmouth where their halyard lock failed on them on the code 0, and they wound up just wrestling the code 0 down onto the boat, and being the caboose of the fleet. And then this was the race. I should have colored this one as well. Their 6 here came because they had dinged the board, and actually in that race they got a pretty good start, but got to the mark and or even in the reach to the first mark, and they just had no speed because of the damage to the board. And then Groupama Team France, still struggling, but they pop in with these 3rd places from time to time. So it's a really, really tight, a really strong field of teams. There's nobody here that is, an easy mark. And in fact, if you look at how things finished up in the Sunday races, Emirates Team New Zealand took first in that last race, but you've got SoftBank Team Japan in 2nd place, Groupama Team France in 3rd place, and then 4, 5, and 6 were the 3 richest teams, actually. So kind of interesting to see how people go up and down in standings and things like that. So the series, there's one more event for this year, and then we'll be on into next year. So let's talk a little bit about the series. Portsmouth and Gothenburg we have had. The next event will be colored pink for the pink sand of Bermuda in Hamilton. And I say Hamilton rather than Bermuda. Of course, it's on the Great Sound where the America's Cup racing in 2017 will be, but the village will be in the city of Hamilton, right along Front Street, for anybody that knows Bermuda. And the race village out in the dockyard, of course, won't be ready until probably sometime mid to late 2016. That doesn't matter because they don't really need it until the 2017 racing that starts in May of 2017. And but the event in October is the last one for the year in the America's Cup World Series. Next year, the schedule was originally, and here's some of this protocol stuff, the protocol said that all of this was supposed to be known and announced by August 1st. Well, the latest version of the protocol changed. So the protocol says now any racing that happens in the first quarter of 2016 has to be announced by the end of September, so in another 28 days. And any racing that happens in the second, third, and fourth quarter of 2016 has to be announced by the end of by December 1st, I believe. Yeah, I think it's December 1st, not December 31st. So, Commercial Commissioner Harvey Schiller, who is responsible for making the announcement, has been given or has given himself a little bit more time to make those announcements. What we do know, and have known for a while, is that we've had the dates for a long time already, months being a long time, that in 2016 they'll be back in Portsmouth. Chicago had been pre-announced, but then not confirmed. But they're actually, this is not official, nobody has announced this, but a couple of us, I think, on the call know that there's a press conference scheduled for Chicago. I'm pretty sure it's the 15th of September that will announce their event. I don't know what the dates are going to be, but I know the date of the press conference. ACEA, in a presentation in Bermuda in May, Sam Hollis, the COO of ACEA, announced He mentioned Portsmouth, he mentioned Chicago, he said U.S. East
40
Coast.
minutes.
That
Another
now appears to be New
50
York,
minutes to go.
which would be really cool. In an interview, Jimmy Spittle talked about iconic cities, and in an informal interview, Ben Ainsley let slip the name New York, although he clearly didn't say it was a done deal, that it was negotiations still going on, but the East Coast venue that's being discussed apparently is New York. Another source also mentioned a regatta in France. Nobody from ACEA has said anything about France, but some of the folks in Gothenburg mentioned that France was under discussion. Once again, there's a funding question for that, but I think it'd be really cool to have a regatta in probably Lorient in Brittany, where Franck Camin has his base, and Michel Desjoyaux with his Mer Agité company for all of Mich Dege's stuff. And of course, they're still talking about Asia and Australasia. I asked Dean Barker if we were going to see a regatta in Japan. He said that would be cool, but nothing definite. And I wasn't able to get much detail on that. But we're still waiting to know whether all of the racing will be next year. If they get up to coming back to that series scoreboard, here's on this chart I've got 5 or 6, let's say, regattas. So that's going to give 5 or 6 more opportunities for some of these double point scores. So we're a long way from knowing who gets the bonus points going into the round robin and how the tiebreak will work. But whatever this series standings looks like at the end of the America's Cup World Series, the top 2 teams will go into the round robin with 2 points and 1 point. And then, assuming that we stay at 6 teams the way we are right now, of course, everybody will race each of the other teams twice, because it's a double round robin, which means that everybody would race 10 races. A perfect score line would be 10 points. And if you went in from this position, you'd have 12. You'd have 2 extra points. And here you'd have 11, 1 extra point. Now, remember that if there are ties at the end of the round robin, we have to come back to this series and look at these standings. Again, remember, this is only after 6 races, so there's a lot more to go for this leaderboard to finalize. But when the leaderboard is final at the end of 2016, now roll forward to May of 2017. Now we're running the round robin. You go in with 2 bonus points if you're first, 1 bonus point if you're second from the World Series. And at the end of the round robin, if there's a tie for first place, it will be these series standings that will decide who gets the bonus point for the America's Cup match. And we've got 5 challengers, so one of them is going to get eliminated by the end of the round robin series. And if there's a tie between the 4th and 5th place teams in the round robin, it'll be the team that did better in this America's Cup World Series standings that will go on to the semifinals, and the other team will be excused from further competition, as we so politely say in the America's Cup. So this stuff is actually really important, these races, and all of these races could wind up having some very, very big importance come May of 2017, and even June of 2017, because a tie for first place in the America's Cup World Series a tie for first place in the round robin, officially known as the Louis Vuitton America's Cup qualifiers, of course, but that's the round robin. That event, the tie-break could decide who gets the bonus point going into the America's Cup match. So, talking a little bit about Bermuda and 2017. In 2017, this is the round robin, officially the Louis Vuitton America's Cup qualifiers. Oracle is not racing in this, of course. They are racing over here. Over here we have the 4 remaining challengers going in semifinals and finals. The scoring for this will be the first to score 5 points will win the semifinals, and then the same scoring first to 5 points for the finals of what they're calling the Challenger Playoffs. And I have not yet heard, anybody can chime in if you've heard, but I have not heard the term Louis Vuitton Cup since Louis Vuitton came back as a sponsor. I've heard all these other names for these different parts of this, but I have not heard the word Louis Vuitton Cup. But I'm going to call this the Louis Vuitton Cup, and so the winner of this is the Louis Vuitton Cup. They become the challenger in the match. 1 point per race, first to 7 points. First to 5 points for these events, first to 7 points for the America's Cup match. But unless there's something, again, protocol stuff, unless there's something that is really escaping me, let's see, how could we make this more difficult to explain to people? I know what we could do. This bonus point stuff, let's make it be a negative bonus point. And in fact, the way the protocol now reads, that if a team that wins the round robin, if they make it to the America's Cup match, they start with a bonus point. If that's Oracle, of course, if Oracle wins this, of course the bonus point will be in play. If a challenger wins this, the challenger has to also win this to bring the bonus point into the America's Cup match. But how does the bonus point work? It means that the other team starts with -1. Supposedly, if you want to make sure that there's a minimum of 7 races, just make it be the first to 8 to win. But no, they had to have it be negative points. Maybe that's to remind people that you can get negative points, and that Oracle had 2 of them for cheating in the last cycle. So again, it escapes me how some of this stuff gets decided, but that's what it is. Moving right along, America's Cup class rule for the boats that will be racing in 2017, a couple of things to say about that. One of the things that they're doing is they're counting dagger boards, and this is, I'm going to go really down in the weeds here, so for the people who aren't as much rules geeks or design geeks as I am, just bear with me, I won't spend too much time on this. The number of dagger boards you can build is different whether you build 2-part dagger boards or 2-piece dagger boards or 1-piece dagger boards. So basically 1-piece dagger boards count double. I think the number is you can build 8. I'm not going to do it off the top of my head. You get to build more lower dagger board sections if you make them 2 parts. I asked Ken McAlpin, the head measurer, hey Ken, so tell me, I was reading this, how do you tell the difference between a 2-part dagger board and a 1-piece dagger board? Jack, very good question. We're still figuring that out. So this label of amateurish does not apply to Ken and McAlpin. Ken is a real pro on the measurement stuff, but it applies, in my humble opinion, to the event in terms of how in the world can we be this far along and not have that kind of stuff nailed down. Well, we're going to count 1-piece and 2-piece dagger boards, but we can't tell you how to tell a live one. There are people who have been involved in Formula One, to which America's Cup Event Authority aspires, call this stuff around the rules pretty amateurish, and have told me that if this were Formula One, the room would be full of lawyers arguing about. Now, I'm not sure that's good, but it certainly would be better to have defined already something as important. The designers only have 3 things they can work on, right? They can work on the foils, dagger boards and rudders, the shapes. They can work on the control systems, and they can work on a limited amount of aerodynamic fairings. Dagger board shapes has got to be one of the most important things, that and the control systems, that you can do in your design work, and we haven't got the rules straight yet as to how we count the 1-piece or 2-piece dagger board. Hydraulic accumulators, this is not to this is not part of the we don't know what the rule is. We do know what the rule is, but I just thought it was interesting to call out that there is stored energy on board the America's Cup class boats. There are hydraulic accumulators allowed. They have to be pumped up, pressurized by the grinders turning the handles, but you're allowed to have 2 accumulators to get the boards up and down, and you're allowed to have 1 for board rake. Having pressure on hand for board rake is important for safety because that can really determine whether a boat does a nosedive and flips over or not. Why do you get more for board elevation? Well, it's because you need to be moving the rams a much bigger distance to move the boards up and down. They'll have a 1 to 2 purchase system inside the lifting mechanism for the boards, which is what Oracle had in the last America's Cup. They had a 1 to 2 hydraulic, a 1 to 2 purchase system driven by a hydraulic ram. That's how they got their boards up and down, as opposed to Team New Zealand that did it with a block and lines. But you only get 1 accumulator for board rake, and as I asked people, well, so where do you put it? People seem to think that you would put it in the central pod and then have to run hydraulic lines out to each board's ram. Of course, the throw on the hydraulic ram is a lot shorter for raking the board than it is for the boards up and down. So that's a little bit on rules. One other thing on rules and the protocol, I've shown this diagram in the past. This is basically this was from the early version of, the first version of the America's Cup class rule. And this parting line, this is the red arrows and the dots in here, that's mine to say where the grinders will be, the wing trimmer, the helmsman. Everything else on the page that's not in red is from the rule. But this parting line is where you have to be able to take the bow section off so that we can get these things into 40-foot containers and ship them around for the America's Cup World Series in the next America's Cup, the AC-36. But guess what? In the protocol, constructed in country has now changed. Remember, the America's Cup deed of gift says that the yacht has to be constructed in the country of the yacht club that it represents. The way you meet that requirement for the 35th America's Cup is you build this piece of your boat in your country. So as long as you've built this in Great Britain, you have all the rest of it from here on back, the wing, the rudders, the control system, bearings, that can be built anywhere. So I'm going to guess that our friends at Core Builders will probably have some pretty good business building some of these things. But that is the rule. You build this part here in your country, and you have complied with the constructed in country requirement. Excuse me. So, I'm going to shift gears again and just do a little review on something I've had a lot of questions about. What do the lights mean on the boat? The lights are driven by the live line system. When the green light is on, sorry to jump around, but I hope that's okay with people. The green light, that means you are within 3 boat lengths of a mark, or they used to label them. This is from the last second. They put on 3 boat lengths. Actually, it's 5 boat lengths from the boundaries. So when you're within 5 boat lengths of the boundary or 3 boat lengths of a mark, the green light comes on, and that signals the fact that rules come into play for who has rights to room. If you want to protest another boat, you push the Y flag button on your little console next to the helmsman on the AC 45F, or wherever you want to put it on your America's Cup class yacht. That signals the umpires that you want to protest the other boat, and if you get a penalty, the blue light comes on, and the blue light stays on until you have burned off your penalty. I won't go into we'll save, how you burn off penalties for another time. On the cross beam of the AC 45s, because if you're the helmsman, you're pretty much looking forward. You can't see there's another one of these lights under the bowsprit so that you can actually see this without looking back. But the helmsman wouldn't be able to see that, so there's actually a blinking yellow light on the forward crossbeam. There's also a blue light, so the helmsman knows if he's got a penalty or not. But this light flashes at an increasing frequency the closer you get to the boundary. That's to help them with boundaries. So that's a quickie on how the Liveline system drives the lights. Now I want to talk about Liveline, which also drives, besides doing the augmented reality graphics for the TV screen, it drives the lights, which the umpires need for judging things. It also drives the umpire. Liveline also drives the umpire system. Let's take a look at that, and let's take this case that I think probably everybody on the call is a big enough fan of the event that you know that this was the last gate in the first race in Portsmouth, and what we have is that Oracle was coming in on port, Emirates Team New Zealand was coming in on starboard, but they were going to jibe around this mark, and Ainsley Racing won the race. So here's that Ainsley has already rounded the mark, and he's headed up for the finish line, which is not over to the right in the picture, which you might expect, but the finish line was up this way. Very important. Normally, and I thought myself mistakenly, that this was a rounding mark, but it's not. It's a gate. And in fact, I don't think it, I don't have the course layout to actually take a look at, so I don't think it could have possibly made sense to go around this gate mark and head up to the finish line. I think it only made sense to go around this way, but technically this was a gate, not a rounding mark. But because Emirates Team New Zealand is the inside boat coming around here, they have rights to room for the rounding. Let's take a look at and both boats protested, by the way, and the umpire's green flag, that neither boat got a protest. Let's take a look at what the umpire saw. This is the screen from the umpire system. It's driven by Liveline, and this is that gate. Here is early in the event in the case where Ainsley has come in, he's jibed, he's going around, he's rounding this side of the gate, and he's going to continue around and head up to the finish line. Here comes Pete Burling on starboard, he's green. The boats change colors for the umpires, by the way, when you go from port to starboard. Here comes Spithill on port, coming in. One of the things that drove the umpires a little bit crazy, and they've asked Ian Murray, please don't do this again, is don't let the circles overlap like this between the two marks. It's much easier for the umpires if the circles don't overlap. This is the 3 boat length circle around the marks. What are these lines coming off the front? Obviously the dots are the breadcrumb trail of the boat. These lines are actually a calculation of where the boat will be in 5 seconds at the speed and heading that it's going right now. So you can see Ainsley is going slow because he's come through the jibe, and he was headed in this direction. Of course, he'll keep turning and his little arrow will move. But you can see that Spithill's going much faster than Burling and Emirates Team New Zealand just by judging this little vector that comes off of the boat on the umpire screen. So let's watch the event take place. Ainsley is completing his rounding. Both boats are now in circles. Emirates Team New Zealand is still on starboard, still the right-of-way boat. They also will be the rights to room boat for going around this mark of the gate. One of the things that just drives me a little bit crazy, and I have to try to get when Ken Reed is announcing on the TV broadcast, he has said a couple of times, he talks about who got into the zone first. It doesn't matter. The racing rules of sailing for the America's Cup, who gets into the zone first has nothing to do with who has rights to room at the mark. Doesn't matter who gets into the zone first, doesn't matter who's on port or starboard, doesn't matter if somebody has to tack or jibe to make it around the mark. All that matters is that the first boat, whoever it is, gets into the zone. If there is an overlap with any other boat, then whoever is the inside boat has rights. So rights to room. So, which is not the same as right of way, of course. So here is Burling coming in. He got into this circle before Spithill, but that doesn't matter. All that matters is that somebody is in the zone. Once somebody is in the zone, the inside boat, which will be Burling for this rounding, will have rights to room. At the moment, in the incident, he is still also the right-of-way boat, and Spithill at this point is still obligated not only to give room, but also to keep clear. That'll change, of course, when Burling jibes. But when they get to this position, Burling is still on starboard. You can see because his boat's still green. Ainsley has come around, and you can get a notion of where he's going by the way he's turning this to come in. So here is Team New Zealand is still on starboard. Both boats are in the circle. Team New Zealand is clearly the inside boat. And if we go on to the last screen, we can see that Team New Zealand has gone on to port, of course, by completing their jibe. Look at Spithill's trail. Look at his breakaway trail. You can judge a little bit the speed of the boat by how close together the dots are as they get spaced out. But look at this. At this point, he had to change course a little bit. And this is what the umpires discussed when they were trying to figure this out and when they did their post-mortem on it to try to figure out what happened there and did we make the right call. Basically, at this point when Team New Zealand was still the right-of-way boat, Oracle was obligated to keep clear of the right-of-way boat. So there is no, what Spithill protested was he thought that Burling was going beyond his proper course to make the rounding. But of course, at the time when that happened, Burling still had rights by being on starboard. But look at this. He actually took the turn a little bit tighter than Ainsley by being able to swing out, make his jibe wider than Ainsley did, and come around. Unfortunately for Team New Zealand, all of this was for naught because Oracle men kept their speed up. And Oracle was able to pass because they had better speed, and so they actually took second place in the race. But rules nerd and geek that I am, I thought it was kind of fun to take a look at that. So, going to shift gears again. Now what happens? We don't have any racing until October. There's no racing in September. But what there will be is on the Great Sound in Bermuda, we will not see Artemis. This is in Bermuda from, I think, May. So here's Artemis and Oracle doing a little bit of side-by-side sailing, not exactly racing, with each other, a little bit of a speed check. But Artemis's turbo boat, as they call it, is back in San Francisco, or in Alameda, better said. Artemis will be sailing on San Francisco Bay in their turbo boat. So I'll have to get our friend John Navis, who sometimes gets out and videotapes stuff on San Francisco Bay. He does a great job. So I've alerted him that they're going to be out sailing. There will be two boats on the Great Sound, though, because Oracle has their boat number 2 of their
hey, my pad's not on.
Of their test boat. So they will actually be sailing
My
two
pad,
of these
oh yeah,
guys.
it's on there.
Boat number 2 was built
that was lucky.
with 2 sets of grinding pedestals in each hull. So they've somehow or other been able to jam in another set of grinding pedestals, so they'll be able to have 4 guys grinding at a time and do some testing. Obviously, Tom Slingsby will be on the helm of one of the boats, and Jimmy Spithill will be on the helm of the other. They have enough sailors that they can do some 2-boat sailing with their 2 boats. And then, of course, October, everybody shifts back into the AC-45Fs for the racing in Bermuda. And sometime towards the end of the year, Oracle takes their first AC-45X and sells it to Team Japan. That's already been decided. So Team Japan will have a test boat that they will be sailing by January because they're buying it from Oracle. And Oracle, by the way, is also providing the design for the race boat to Team Japan. Now, Oracle has said that anybody can buy their design, so they'll sell their design to anybody. Of course, I think it's a little bit like Luna Rossa having bought Team New Zealand's design in the last America's Cup. If you buy the other team's design, you're probably not going to get the latest rev. So that's what's happening, coming up with the AC-45X development boats. One more thing, we're going to go roll the clock back in history a little bit, and we've got Troy Sears is in the meeting, in the webcast with us, and Troy is this guy right here. So here's Troy on board the yacht America in San Francisco. He's smiling, so that means he's not too nervous about me here being on the helm of his boat. This was actually August 22nd, 2013, so it was the anniversary of America's Cup of America winning the race around the Isle of Wight in 1851, and Troy took the helm back, and we turned around. That's the Bay Bridge in the background for people who know San Francisco. Turned the boat around and looped back, and we actually crossed the finish line and took the gun right at the exact moment, adjusted for GMT to California time, when America won the race around the Isle of Wight. So Troy, I'm going to turn your microphone on, and you've just come off of touring around. Troy, your microphone should be on now. So tell us a little bit about what you've been up to with America and where she is now, and whatever we know about the tour that's going to continue on. So over to you, Troy, if you're with us. Maybe we may not have Troy's microphone set up right, but Troy, I'm gonna leave your mic open. So if you get the sound, just interrupt me and start talking, and I'll give people a little bit of an update on things as I know them, and you can add some color or comments. The Yacht America has been on tour on the west coast of the U.S. already. I think he's been to something like 30 stops already. That may be a little bit high, but has already been going around. There'll be some stops in Mexico sometime in 2016. America will wind up on the other side of at the other end of the Panama Canal and start doing an East Coast tour. And at some point in, I think, early 2017, and if we don't get Troy's mic on, I'll get the information from him and get it out in my newsletter. America will actually have a run. I don't know if we'll call it a race, but we'll sail at the same time to Bermuda from the U.S. East Coast as a boat called the Spirit of Bermuda, which is it's a replica of a Bermuda sloop. A three-master, which there were contemporaries of America, and I need to do a little bit more digging in my Bermudian naval history, which I've been reading up on. But the Bermuda sloops were fast boats. They had sharply raked masts. They were built out of cedar, which was lighter than oak, so they had better materials than some of the other boats that were floating around in the mid-19th century. And the lines of the HMS Bermuda, which was not a yacht but was a warship, were pretty close in the size to America. And the HMS Bermuda was built in 1848. This Spirit of Bermuda is not a direct replica of, I don't think, of any particular Bermuda sloop, but it'll be really cool to have these two grand yachts sailing through the Atlantic, winding up in Bermuda, and have both of them be in Bermuda while the Cup is going on. So that's really cool. I'm very, very excited about seeing America while she's on that tour. I'm going to leave this slide up. I've gone over the time I planned to talk by a little bit, but I just talk a lot. But I just come back to a couple of comments that have come through the chat and respond to them. Thanks everybody who's on the line on the webcast for being here. I love talking about this stuff, you can probably tell. And I really am very happy to be able to share with everybody. So a couple of comments. Ludovic Sorlo is on the line, and he asked earlier about the calendar and the time delays between the different events in 2017 and how important they are. And that's absolutely right. Ludovic, by the way, publishes Cup Legend. So there is a site called cuplegend.com. There is an app called Cup Legend that you can find in the App Store for, I think, for the iPad now, and I believe soon for Android if it's not available for Android already. Beautiful layout, beautiful images, but you have to read French because Cup Legend is in French, but it's really good. So, but Ludovic asked the question about the delays between the events. Let's start with June 17th, 2017, Father's Day in 2017. That will be the day of the first race of the America's Cup match. Back up from that, and I'm going to do this from memory, 25 days before that date, the America's Cup, the Louis Vuitton semifinals and finals start, and they have to be completed 3 days before that date. So they will finish up by the June 14th at the latest. I'll check all of these dates and put out an article in my newsletter. But this is, you get the basic structure here. And then before that is the round robin. And the round robin by the dates will start in about mid-May. And whatever, I'll check the exact date, but the exact date of the start of the round robin, count backwards 150 days from that, and that's the first day you're allowed to launch your America's Cup class yacht. So that will take you into about mid-December 2016. So the first launch dates for the America's Cup class race boats will be in, the first allowable date will be in mid-December 2016. Now, one thing to keep in mind is there's still some talk about potentially having another challenger or maybe even two. We'll see whether anybody materializes, but if you added another challenge, say you added one more challenger, that challenger would then, so we'd be up to 7 teams, so that challenger would have to race all of the other teams twice, which would mean you would have to add 12 races to the schedule, which might actually push the start of the round robin to an even earlier date. So if you're following me there, right? So if you're in a round robin, if there are 6 teams in the round robin, everybody has to race 5 times, and it's a double round robin, so that means everybody has 10 races. If you go to 7 teams total, everybody has to race each other team. That's 6 times 2 is 12. So we wind up with a lot more races in the schedule by adding another team or 2. So we'll see how if those dates change, but that's what they are right now. So Ludovic, thank you for that question. Joe Kirk is asking about the future direction of the video broadcast. I don't know what the viewership numbers are. I know that people have been frustrated, depending upon what country you're in, on how the app works or where the broadcast restrictions are. I won't try to go into all of the, where you can see it and where you can't. But if you take, for instance, France, you can't see nothing. You can't see the live racing. There are no replays on the app. There are no second screen cameras to see the onboard footage of any of the boats. There's nothing of that in France. I think it's pretty close to the same thing in Italy, but I'm not 100% sure on that. The French team, Groupama Team France, is actually talking to the rights holder, Canal Plus, and trying to say, hey guys, come on. you know, if you're not going to show stuff, at least let people watch it on the app, would you please? So, not clear whether they'll get anywhere with Canal Plus, but that's the plan. Yes, Peter Sass, I enjoyed being with you on board America that I was lucky enough to have chartered for that day. And that was good fun. And yes, I will send you that picture. Jack Everett, you're talking about the app working well for replays. Originally, you could watch, if you were an app premium, if you had bought the rights to watch the live racing, you could also watch a replay of it in your browser on your computer, and they've taken that away. So you can only watch stuff on your tablet or smartphone right now. Mark Harris, you're right, there are no YouTube video replays yet, and the plan is there won't be any because they're really trying to protect the rights holders who have bought the rights for their particular countries. Oh, no, everybody here on this call is a friend, so nobody here will say anything to my friends at ACA about me saying this, but I got to tell you, I think that somebody is thinking in, you know, broadcast television, that is so 20th century. Oh, my goodness. You know, it seems to me that you really need to be thinking a lot more on pumping narrowcasting out to the audience that really wants to see sailing, and not having your digital strategy any better than it is right now strikes me as being really goofy. But that's just...
What is it, Netflix, is it?
Sergey, I'm going to have to exchange some emails with you about how you used Apple TV, because I'd love to see how to do that. I'd love to experiment with that kind of stuff. And I'll send you an email tomorrow, and you can help me learn about that, and then maybe I can write up an article for the newsletter and put it on my website. I'm going to declare the webcast closing down very soon. I don't have anything more to present. If anybody wants to stay online, I'm happy to stay online for a little bit longer and you know, answer questions, keep talking, but I don't have anything more prepared. I'm going to call that the end of it. Thank everybody for being with us. The next one is in the calendar, and I'll get I'll make sure that everybody's notified that we're doing one of these a month. We'll get one at the end of September with, you know, sort of last info before the Bermuda America's Cup World Series. Thanks very much, everybody, for being with me. Well, you know what? For the next one at the end of September, let's check things out a little bit ahead of time, and you know, if you're available, I'd love to have you, you know, talk, maybe give it a little bit of a presentation, tell people what the experience is that you're offering. You know, America is great. You know, lots of people love her, so let's do some advertising for it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've done now. We'll be home on Thursday. We're at our last stop today at Delray Yacht Club in Marina Del Rey in Los Angeles, and then when we get home, we'll have made over 30 stops this summer.
Oh, that's incredible! Whoa.
It really is incredible. So.
Okay, well, you know, I really do. We know that we can make this technology work. Let's just make sure. Let's synchronize a little bit more ahead of time for the next webcast date, and put a segment into it about America and the experience that people can have.
Very good.
Cool.
All
Thanks,
right.
Troy.
And then maybe next time, maybe we'll even check the mic before to even
Yeah.
start.
Well, what we can do is we can both come online, you know, maybe 15 minutes before the official start time and do a sound check.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. Thanks, Jack.
Great.
That was
Okay.
very informative.
Oh, great. There's a lot of stuff to talk about and do, and I always I struggle a little bit between, you know, getting down too much in the weeds of details, but people seem to like most of it, so that's good.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Troy. I'm just Robert Cannons. I've just unmuted your mic. If you're online and you care to talk, you certainly can. But I see your message about the 300K that came on board the AC-45F. I don't know. I can only make a guess as to where it would come from. Certainly, some of it is batteries, because there's some batteries that have been added to power the motor. So there's got to be motors in each hull to drive the hydraulic system. There's got to be batteries to drive that. Clearly, you're right. The foil case would be heavier than the standard daggerboard case on the old displacement mode AC-45. But precisely where how the 300 kilograms is spread around among those things, I don't know. But be happy to ask and see if we can find out. Okay, folks, we seem to have run out of questions and comments. For those of you who are still on the call, I'm gonna shut it down. But I'll send out a link to everybody. Actually, the same credentials, the same login that you used to come into it will work probably within about an hour to watch a replay. Unfortunately, the replay system does not have really a fast forward or a random access mode. There is kind of a clunky beta test version of fast forward and random access controls, and I'll put out an email with documentation about what you can try to do for that. But just the straight through replay should be up and available by using the same login credentials within about an hour, maybe even sooner. So I'm going to shut the meeting down. Thanks everyone for being with me, and hope to see you the next time. Oh, PDF slides. Yes, you should be able to download the presentations that I showed. I think there's a PDF button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And I think that's where the button is for you on your screen. You should be able to get it. If not, I'll make them available as downloads from my website and send out the links to that in a follow-up newsletter, follow-up email to everybody who was on the call. Thanks.